figure out that in the acronym LAMP, there's a little, especially in MySQL and PHP, two parts are originating from Finland, and we are fortunate today to have Mr. M here, Monty Widenius, the creator of MySQL and MariaDB, and Monty is going to step us through how the MySQL actually happened, and then we are taking a little review what's happening in the next version of the MariaDB. Monty, please.
Yes. So, good morning, midday, and so on. So, I'm more a coder, and I feel more at home in front of the computer, and that also means that I only hold speeches because I have to, and I have a hard time saying no when people ask me. So, feel free to interrupt me at any time. I'm more like interactive discussions, and then you also are more likely to get the information that you want. So this talk is a little bit about the history of MySQL, but also should give you some information about what it means to be an entrepreneur in doing open source, what you need to do, how to succeed, and some of the challenges when trying to do it again. And this, I will hope everybody can read, because I will only talk about the slides. Actually, could you put?
Yeah, we can drop the lights.
So then I don't need to repeat what's on the screen. So, but first a little bit about my background and the reason I actually started doing open source, and the reason was that I thought that I could do something good for the world. I've been always fascinated by open source, seen it as a better development model, and before that I was mostly doing consulting, actually for a Swedish company. And we did a lot, and being open source is not so much about money, but being able to deliver the software to lots of other people and actually go out in the world and meet them and talk about it, if you succeed. And we started pretty early. This is 99. Here we are in Madagascar, and these guys, it's the first time they see a little bit blonde girl. So that's me who was giving the name to MySQL. And we did work from home. I was working in Helsinki. This is my second home, and David Axmark, the second founder of MySQL, was working in Sweden, in Uppsala. And things were pretty good in the beginning, but it was interesting to actually deliver open source and not only use it. And we also have a son, Max, and we also used his name in some products, MaxDB, and the MySQL Max version had everything enabled. And when you create a company and a successful product and you grow, there are always some growing pains. And we also come into some strange company who anybody who knows the MySQL history should know. And some of us got a little bit scared what will happen next. But fortunately, there is somebody else who can continue from MySQL and MariaDB, and we were very careful with naming Maria so that we still could keep the Emil lab. So, me, without SQL, she actually spent, after school, a couple of years traveling in Latin America, not caring about the product, free as a bird. But the question when you start with something new is the next generation up to it. Because it's a really, really hard job to replace the success. When we started with MySQL, there were not any good, free database usable for web. And even the commercial ones was not really usable for web. So we basically come out with a product that was the right thing at the right time with the right price. And now we already have MySQL existing, so it's really, really hard to repeat it, take it over. It's a little bit like taking a rabbit out of a hat. And I like this picture because when I was young, I actually did some magic, and I had a hard time deciding should I be somebody who would do magic or somebody who would take care of animals. My favorite job back then was going to Africa and hunt hunters. We didn't gone in computers, so we probably have done that. But we are quite confident that we can pull it off. By the way, this picture is a bit fun, because when I was in the US this spring, I got not lots, but some people were very upset. How can you show a picture with a girl with a gun? And but I did even then point there that the gun is not the main thing. The main thing is that we are confident. And then that's the best picture I have of my daughter when she's confident. Maybe the gun helps, but so we can be happy that with the new product we still have the same team that created MySQL. So this is a very brief history. It's actually a really long product. Started coding in 1981. First in BASIC, then in C, and of course I then used DCC. I actually used a Swedish compiler before that, DCC. But actually started using Emacs from the start and was very happy with open source and always wanted to give something back. But it wasn't until 1995 when we actually had a product that we thought that this is good enough to give to the open source community. And we actually can make enough money on it to be able to survive and work in full time, which is actually the hardest problem with open source. How do you actually create something that you can work full time and don't have to do consulting on the side? But that's a separate talk that we can have some other day. So we were made lots of stir in the news when we got sold for 1 billion in 2008, and there were some problems with the Sun that actually come out that forced us to go out and start on Maria. And of course, Oracle getting MySQL was the thing that forced us to actually start working on MariaDB. That will go into these things later. So, the problem with open source is that to be able, if you are a developer and don't want to do consulting all your life, and you actually want to develop a product, you need to find a way to earn money on it. Not much, but enough so that you can spend full time development. And back in 95, there were not many business models on open source. Basically, they were zero. And we come up by copying Go's script. So it was the first program that we know of the dual licensing. And we did the same with MySQL. We were the first one who did that on GPL. And that actually changed things for us. So we were not only able to do it, basically developing full time. I was home developing full time. David was out around the world talking about MySQL, and we were profitable in 2 months. And without having to do lots of consulting, actually do development. And nowadays I'm holding a lot of talk about business source, and which I believe is the right way to do profitable business around open source. I can talk about that later, but that's another talk. Lastly, you will find a lot to think about business source at my blog. So the challenge is when you are just a couple of persons and you want to do something is create a product. You don't really know what it means to be an entrepreneur. I've basically been an entrepreneur since 81, but always on my own, only working with basically a couple of friends in Sweden. So now we grow from a couple of years, 5 years, from 2 to 15 people. We have no salespeople, we are only developers, no marketing, no lawyers, nothing. And we were profitable. And that was thanks to the dual licensing, and thanks to that we was actually a very lean company. We didn't have any offices. And we even to the end of MySQL history, we were 450 people when we were sold to Sun. More than 300 did work from home. So we were very lucky to get the MySQL name out. There were a great need of a free database. I had been working on this already for 14 years. We didn't use it ourselves. We didn't know it was very stable, reliable. We didn't have SQL originally, so what I did just before releasing it, I wrote a SQL on top of my old code and made it work in such a way it would be very suitable for web, because that's how we used it. And one of the things that actually created MySQL and got us to get a user base was not actually the code. I mean, the code was good, it was stable, but it was how you interact with the community. So I spent the first 5 years personally writing 30,000 emails to people, and my people that was working with me, the other 14, was also writing a lot of emails. But this thing about really effectively helping people, ensuring that everybody got an answer. I ensured during the first 5 years that everybody who sent an email to the email list got an answer, either from me or by somebody else. Originally I answered everything. Later I first checked that has somebody answered. So anybody, when did you start using MySQL? Who were using 3.23? 4.0? Okay, a couple of ones. So did you ever be on an email list and ask questions? No. The problem was that we actually had a pretty stable product, so most didn't have to. And we also spent a lot of time writing documentation. So in the beginning, when I saw a question being answered asked two or three times, I immediately put it in the manual and just sent an email. It's no in the manual. And that's how we created the manual. And when you do a product right and you get a big user base, you don't have to search for investors. They will come to you. So we did in 97 go to the valley and ask if investors are interested with us. It was kind of, but we didn't get any good responses. But after the third year, they basically knocked on our door, and once a month somebody came to us and said, we really would like to invest. And we just said, no, we are not ready. We are profitable, we don't need investment. And the best offer we got was 50 million in 99, and then we were basically the 3 person who owned the company. But we said no to that. And because we were afraid that we would lose control. We really wanted to do something that would be available forever. And we didn't trust the investors to not do something stupid if they would earn the code. So when you grow, sooner or later you come to a stage when you can't do everything yourself. Up to 2001, I was basically handling all sales, paying all salaries and everything else. And I kind of needed help for that, but for all these administrative persons who doesn't generate money, you need more income. We also started to get people really demanding features that we couldn't deliver fast enough. And it was only in 2000 that posters actually started to get a bit of popularity. Before that they didn't have SQL and it wasn't really visible. So we had 3 choices: continue before organically, sell it, which we didn't want to do, or take in investors. And we wanted to basically change the way that databases work, and especially the price structure in databases, which then were even more crazy than it's now. And I believe that one of the reasons that databases are affordable for most today is thanks to MySQL. So we thought that this is the thing long term. We still wasn't thinking about how much we will actually earn on this. We were not sure that can this be sold or not. We just wanted to do something that was good, that we could generate enough money to run the company and provide a good workplace for everyone. Of course the investors wanted to have more, but me and David, that was our main goal. The problem when you take investors is you lose control, and you basically lose the say that what will have in the company in the long run. We did know that, but we thought that still is the best for the product, and we did know that we still have some say of who we can get sold to. So when Sun come up and gave an offer, I was extremely happy because I did believe then, based on the information I had, that Sun was the best possible company to buy MySQL, because they did understand development. They could fix the internal struggle we had between a management department who only looked at money and a software development department who wanted to do something good for open source. And Sun did understand open source, we thought. And they did understand development. And we even got proof that Sun was a really good company, because half a year after Sun had bought us, the management team announced that that they will no add commercial closed source plugins to MySQL. And I went to Sun Management and asked that, is this really what you wanted? And Sun said, nobody told us that was not what we bought MySQL. The strength in MySQL is open source that everybody using. So they forced the MySQL management team to remove all these ideas of commercial features, which I thought that this was the company I wanted to work with. So I was in Sun until just before the Oracle came. So when Oracle announced that they will buy Sun, I and lots of other people in the MySQL development department didn't really believe that they would have good intentions with MySQL, and up to date Oracle hasn't given a single binding promise of what will happen with MySQL in the future. And basically they have also changed the model from open source to open core, and they also have started to do things that are making MySQL impossible for others to develop by removing test cases. And anybody knows that if you have a product without test cases, you can't do any changes because you don't know if this change is correct or not. So basically MySQL is from all practical purposes from Oracle to a closed source product and not usable for the community. And so I had two goals when creating MariaDB. I wanted to ensure that the persons who I worked with a long time, have become friends over time, would have a good workplace for life, and that something that I have created, that I worked on since 1981, wouldn't just disappear. So I didn't have a plan to just jump to the next project. I'm here to ensure that there should always be an affordable database, free for all. That's what MariaDB is. So we started in 2009. We originally had agreement with Sun. We will create the Maria storage engine, but we just took the name and changed to use MariaDB instead, because just doing a replacement of InnoDB, which was the idea, was not as important to saving MySQL. So Monty from AB was never done to own MariaDB. We wanted to do MySQL right. There are a lot of things really good with MySQL, but from an open source development point of view, it was far from optimal. We would have wanted to fix that. So we created a technical company who only did development. We used something called the hacking business model, something I and Zach Grant created, which is the idea of how to create a company where everybody is equal. So how many here are entrepreneurs? And if you are working on a company with friends, or you are planning to work with a company with friends, and you want to create something where everything is equal and fair, and you want to have people who want to be employed by you because this is the right company to work with. Look at the hacking business model on the net. All the rules are out there, and when we wrote a contract in Monty from AB for employing a person, basically the contract was, here's what you do, here's the salary, all the rules are on the net, on the page, like this one. So that is everything, how you should share options, how you should do voting, how you should create an atmosphere to where everybody would feel that they're equal. And we had that in effect in Monty from AB until we were sold to SkySQL earlier this year with the merge. So SkySQL is a company that employed most of the salespeople, the trainers, the best support people. So I was able to, thanks to the money I got from Sun, to employ all the best core engineers. So basically all core engineers who ever worked on MySQL, the best of the best, all moved to MariaDB. But I couldn't afford to save all my friends in MySQL. So that's why I was part of funding SkySQL. It will be the home for the rest of the people that I couldn't afford. So the difference was that Monty from AB was never intended to have investors or get sold, because working with an open source product is, when you can't do dual licensing or business source, it's really hard to get investors. But this was more company created to get investment. and they just got $20 million investment with Intel Capital as a lead. So they are doing quite good, and if you need support on MySQL or MariaDB, this is the best company to go to, because they now employ all the core engineers of MySQL and MariaDB. Myself, I'm working on the foundation, and the reason for creating a MariaDB foundation was twofold. Once, I wanted to be sure that what happened to MySQL would never happen to MariaDB again. So the foundation owns the trademark of the server, and also MariaDB.org, and that means that the foundation is the one who defines this is the official MariaDB tree. Here's where anybody can push, and nobody can take the development away from them. So that way we can ensure that the development of MariaDB will always be free. Anybody can get commit access. Anybody can be part of the community. The other problem with that the foundation was supposed to solve and actually solved was that Monty AB, we were 15 people, the best of the best. We did lots of releases with MariaDB. The problem is that you can't just do software development. You also need to have somebody that should pay for that to happen. The problem with an open source project is really hard to find sponsors. I actually thought that with my background of creating MySQL and actually putting a lot of efforts to ensure that MySQL would be free with MariaDB, we could get sponsors. In 4 years, we have got 3 sponsors. And that only the foundation. To get people to pay for features in Monty AB, we had only a few sponsors. So basically, we did run the first years totally on the money I got from Sun. So I paid for everything. It cost me about 4 million euros to save MySQL. But no, we are in a good position, so there's I'm as sure as I can be that MariaDB will survive. But it was really hard in the beginning. And without creating the foundation, I wouldn't have been able to get a lot of the things done that I will talk about in the next slides that actually kind of saved the project. So now I'm the CTO. We have 3 full-time MariaDB developers working on the foundation, and 1 documentation writer who's doing an amazing job of recreating the MySQL documentation and creating MariaDB documentation. So we are searching for members and sponsors. The only way that MariaDB can survive as an open source project is that we get sponsors. So if anybody of you have a company or working at a big company who can afford to become a member or sponsor us with, please talk with me after this one. And because if currently we have money to the end of the year, we will get something for the new members, but we need more members to be able to continue. And I think we're doing a good job. I will come to that. So what is MariaDB? So we are 100% compatible with MySQL with the same main version. We really are a drop-in replacement. So if you have MySQL, you just throw it out, install MariaDB, start it, everything works. You don't have to change anything. You don't have to change any connector, or your programs will work unchanged. So we are true drop-in replacement. But we have much more plugins, features, we have faster, better code, and that the better code comes from the fact that because Oracle lost all the people who really know the code, they're still doing bug fixes, and we do merges every month to keep us compatible. The problem is that they introduce lots of bugs in their bug fixes. Every 10 bug fixes is basically wrong, and that happens because they don't understand the code. So they basically do workarounds on the upper level instead of fixing the true bug underneath. And when we do the merges, we review everything, and then we fix those. And we also add in test cases for things that they have removed, just to be able to ensure that the code we add is more correct. We also very open in development. We have all of our plans on our website, MariaDB.org. Everything is on public repositories, everything is pushed at once. And we have lots of external contributors now. And that was the one thing that we failed in MySQL, that all the core server was more or less 100% developed in MySQL AB. We got lots of help from the community on the outside. All the connectors, Java, Ruby, everything else was done by the community. But we had a good grip on the server because it was so complex that we didn't really get lots of people contributing to it. And those who were very, very active, we hired. So what have we done during the last 5 years? We have done 4 main releases. We just released the beta this week. And the beta, the 10.0, the alpha to beta was way too long. We are trying to do a release every 9 months. The main reason was that we were waiting for one feature per application to be done because we really wanted to have that in the 10.0. We also have a MariaDB multi-master release. We are working with the Galera team to do that. And that means that you can have lots of servers and you can do updates in any of those and they sync each other in the background. So that's for those who really want to have something that is extremely stable and has up to 10 servers, you do get some benefits in performance. So the releases that we worked on, 5.1 was just a better test and build system because the build system was never open sourced. And that actually is something that I hope can be a lesson to others because it was a lesson to me was that we did a really nice build system inside MySQL AB. We always wanted to release it. The problem was that when you release something, you also need to maintain it. And the guy who wrote it just never had time to write the documentation and everything else. So we wanted to do it open source, but in the end we didn't because we were lazy. And then when Oracle bought Sun, they decided we will not release it, which just forced us to build a new one. So now we have done right, everything is open source. So if somebody wants to take MariaDB, do their own version, and start building, they can do that in 1 or 2 hours. So we basically also make the building of MySQL free. We did lots of code cleanups, we fixed them, fixed a lot of test cases and just made it easy to work with. So then we started Maria 5.2 and 3 in parallel. So there were lots of things that was done in the community on the server, but MySQL has never accepted, and that was because of internal difficulties between the management team and the community team, that we never had people that was assigned to work with the community. So with Monty from AB and with the foundation, we had done it totally different. The foundation is responsible to actively go out to the community, try to get them to develop things, and if there's a patch in the community, we take it in as soon as possible. So 5.2 has lots of things that are developed by the community. 5.3 is the optimizer release. So everybody who originally worked on the optimizer in MySQL, everybody moved to MariaDB. And they spent 3 years first taking everything that was in MySQL 6.0 that Oracle promised to release but never did and probably never will. They backported that to MariaDB and they spent then 3 years optimizing that and fixing things. And that's basically MariaDB 5.3. And then we also added some nice features. And then MariaDB 5.5 is just merged between MariaDB 5.3 and 5.5. We also, how many use MariaDB here? Okay, that's more than usual. And MySQL, okay, that's 50% MariaDB. Okay, that's usually we get I get 10 to 20. When I started, it took basically 3 years to get most of the people in the audience to know what MariaDB. So the first years was kind of hard. But anyway, if you're using MariaDB, please put this on, because that will tell us the one thing that you have problem with in MySQL and still in MariaDB. We need to know what features are used. So this basically does a show status once a week and sends the information to the server, and anybody can go and look at the results. Total anonymous, but that tells us which feature are used, so we know when we get resources, where should we put our development on. So this is helping us plan in the future. And when you do an open source project, any project, it's really hard to know that is this feature important or that. So I remember that most of the development discussions we had in MySQL was, should we continue implementing this or not? And we didn't know. So feedback plugin enables us to do that. You can also use this to monitor your own servers, because all the code to get the feedback is also available. So if you want to do your own status of your own servers, you can use this one. So in 5.2, all the blue things are things that comes from the community. So so we spent a lot of things working with that. 10.0 has also a lot of other things from the community. Of those, I will go to the more important things here. So I don't know if anybody uses MyISAM here still. Does anybody? Okay, but if you go to MariaDB, you could basically get a 2.5 times performance improvement just because we did a segmented key cache. This was actually done by a Finnish company who donated that to us. With 5.3, this is the biggest redesign of the optimizer in 10 years. Much bigger than MySQL 5.6, which is the MySQL optimizer release, because 5.6 is basically taking the code from 6.0 that my optimizer team had done and backporting that and fixing some small issues in 5.6. While we took that code and added 3 years of development by the 3 best optimizer people. And the nice thing with the new optimizer compared to 5.5 is you can easily get for complex queries 10x to 100x speedups. We also added microseconds way before MySQL. We added that in 10.0, and of course they did that in a way that was not compatible with ours. And that's kind of is a shame that actual Oracle is trying to do things harder for us by making things incompatible. So in 10.0, what we do is that we support both the MySQL version and ours. We have asynchron I/O Windows installer, and this I was visiting booking.com a couple of years ago, and I saw that they have written a very complex tool to measure how long will it take to run an alta table. So while I was there sitting and listening to their talks, I wrote the progress reporting for alta tables. So now when you do an alta table in the command line, you will see 10% done, 20% done, 30% done. It also works for load table and some other commands. And these are basically different transformations that are done in the optimizer, but you will get the slides afterwards, and everything is on the website. Group commit is probably the feature that was our MariaDB most known for. I will have a slide about that. But we also have no precise GIS operation, and in MariaDB 10.0 we can run OpenStreetMap fully in MariaDB, which kind of makes me happy, because the one reason people use Postgres or said they use Postgres was that we didn't support GIS operation fully. Now we have better support than Postgres for GIS. So we had, this is true for MySQL up to 5.5, that there were a bug in the DB that even MySQL scale is really, really good in normal cases. As soon as you add replication and you're a master, scaling basically stops. Facebook did have a problem with this, of course, because if you don't get anything for your multi-CPU machines, then you have issues. So they created a patch to fix that. Then they contacted us and asked, can we do it better? And this is how MariaDB performs. So basically what this means is that if you have using MySQL 5.5 and you go to MariaDB, if you have a master that does lots of writes, you immediately get to a 4 times speed up without doing anything. Perfectly safe. So as soon as that this bug was published, it was published by Facebook, Oracle announced that we will also have group commit in 5.6. And they had a long specification how they plan to do it. In the end, they copied the design in MariaDB with a small change and didn't at all use their design. And in MySQL 6.0 you have that kind of a performance gain. And in 10.0 we didn't improve the group commit, so we're still in many cases up to 8 core we are twice as fast as MySQL 5.6. But when it goes higher and we have still plans to do this even better. So the issue is that what happens here is that you did one sync for every transaction. We were able to group things together and get this kind of performance by taking 10 transactions or as many we were running at a given time and grouping those together, but we had to do 3 fsyncs instead of 1. But because we did so many more at the same time, we got that speed up. So in this case we have changed this, so we only do 2 fsyncs. And Krista Nielsen have an idea how to get it down to 1. And we probably do that in 10.1 or 11.0. And then we are kind of had optimal that you can have. So NoSQL. Anybody using NoSQL here? 5.6. And what MongoDB? How about Cassandra? 1. So usually I see that when I ask this question, I see that Cassandra is about 1/10 and MongoDB is about 20 to 30%. And then the others are something else for those who use it. So I know you can correct me if I'm wrong, but these are the 2 main reasons I see people using NoSQL. And the last actual reason is that MongoDB is so simple, they just use it because they don't want to learn SQL. But personally I believe that most use of NoSQL is not needed. MariaDB can handle almost anything nowadays, but still people are going to use the NoSQL infrastructure and some of the solutions are interesting, so we are doing a lot in MariaDB to help those who believe in NoSQL. So the main reason is handling unstructured data and faster replication. And when Twitter started the discussions about NoSQL and said that we need to go to Cassandra, they were basically having this problem. And with scaling like this is basically the same similar thing that you get with most NoSQL. So with MariaDB, the fast replication is not an issue anymore. Especially with Galera and Multimaster, you can get even better performance than NoSQL. But handling unstructured data is still a problem. But we did some things to make things easier for using NoSQL, and dynamic column is probably the biggest thing, because it helps solve the most common problem in SQL, that with SQL you actually can't write a good website that sells things, because you can't store different attributes into different fields, because having size and color doesn't really work with CPU, megahertz and memory. You don't want to have a column for every single thing. So if you go to any of the stores nowadays, you see a lot of technical issues, but most of those are just listed after each other because it's so hard to separate those. And NoSQL stores this by having JSON and everything else around your types. So that's why I come up with dynamic columns. This was actually an idea I had already 10 years ago, but I never had time to implement it. This allows you to easily use unstructured data in MariaDB. And we did that by just creating six functions that allows you to easily pack and repack and retrieve things from a blob. Has anybody used this? Yeah. Okay. So, and with these building blocks, we were able to do a Cassandra storage engine, and we're working on a level DB storage engine, just as a proof of concept that we actually can handle easily dynamic data within the SQL. And I know that people have implemented web stores with these, because these are really, really fast operations. We also added a new thread pool for 5.5, because in MySQL 5.5, the Enterprise Edition, they added a thread pool closed source. We want to ensure that everything Oracle adds as closed source, we will have as open source. So we added a thread pool, and the idea with the thread pool is that if you have lots of connections, you will get much better performance. Because normally we have a one thread per connection, and when connection goes up to 1,000 connections at the same time, performance goes drastically down, because the CPU is doing nothing else than switching process, actually, or thread. And I've been visiting a couple of gaming companies who said that they have a really problem with lots of users. And when I show in this graph, they said that that's exactly the problem we have. So by adding a pool of threads, which means that you say that we only have this number of threads handling all your questions, you basically get rid of this thread swapping, and you get much better performance. The problem with this one is that if you only have, assuming say that you have 10 cores and you have 10 threads that handles of your queries. If you have then 10 long-running queries, then all your threads will be occupied, and if you do more questions, nothing will happen until these long-running queries are done. So that's why we allow you to use both at the same time. So it's just a different port. So if you want to run with thread per connection, use one port, and then pool of threads, use another one. So that allows you to easily manage your load and handle or get the best of both worlds. So we have lots of optimizations done in the optimizer in MariaDB. So this is not for going through, but just to see that MySQL 5.5, even if Oracle worked on that 3 years, they didn't add anything from MySQL 6.0 to it. From MySQL 5.6, the current release, they have done a few optimizations, but not all, and ours are much more mature and done by people who really know the code. And in effect, they added one thing that we didn't have, and we added that in 10.0. So we are now using MariaDB 10.0 instead of MariaDB 5.6, and the reason is that in 5.6 there is some code that is so bad we don't want to touch. And nobody running 5.6 here. Okay, good, you are wise guys. You shouldn't. From looking at the code and getting bug reports from people from MySQL who have problems, most people who are running 5.6 and trying to run with all application features has a problem. That code is alpha or pre-alpha. It shouldn't even have left the lab. So we basically have to rewrite everything in replication. And that's what we're doing in MariaDB 10.0. And if you would have called MariaDB, the next version, 5.6, without all features, people will be confused. So it will take us basically 1 year more to get all features of 5.6 into MariaDB, because it takes time to rewrite. So that's why we decided to do things in 2 steps. So we have now 10.0 done, feature free, all features are there. We have almost all features of 5.6. And we are going to ensure that every single option that you use, every syntax will work. Some of those were just for optimization, maybe not done, but you will not notice it. So in practical, 10.0 will be also drop-in replacement of 5.6. And in the 100% case, that will be done in 10.1. But there's Christian had a very nice blog about why we don't trust the code in 5.6. And I think his best example was that somebody added new code to the application, and in the code they have a comment. I don't know what this code does, but I will keep it here just in case. And that was new code that developer has pushed. So these are things we have done in 5.6. We took the most important features, everything we do in the DB and the online alter table, everything is done. We have rewritten a lot of things, especially global transaction ID and parallel replication. And the base implementation exists means that we are no feature freeze. We just published the beta. We still have some known issue with the parallel replication, but we have companies like Google who really want to test this. So we had done a release. We marked the parallel application as alpha. We will have a gamma by the end of the year, and by then it will be stable. But this no is good for other people also to help us fix the last remaining issues. There are lots of new features. I like the multi-source, so you can have easily do backup. If you have lots of master, you can just add one slave with a slave on the other one, so you can then have one place where you can do all your backups. We have Cassandra working. Level DB actually is not done. We have it kind of working, but not complete, and we are working with one customer to finish that one. We added Connect, Storage Engine, and TokuDB. I have a couple of slides of those, which MetaGIS supports. I started to run out of time, so I will go quickly. And here's some of the features that are proposed for the next versions. Anybody can go to our Jira page or our 10.x page and propose new things that we should do. And as with any open source project, nothing will really be done if there's not a paying customers. We're doing that, either doing that, paying us to do that, or somebody in the community come and tells us, here's a patch, I want to work with us. So if you want to have something done, this is true for any project, not only MariaDB. You need to be prepared to pay a little bit, because that's how we actually make money, so we can get things done. But I like the concept with open source, and that's actually what I like with working with open source and the business of open source, that only one person has to pay and everybody benefits. And for creating a company around open source is really, really good. But the challenge is that lots of people are thinking that somebody else can pay. And that has always been a challenge with MySQL. So we have lots of ideas what we will do. Some of those we will do because we already have customers for those. Other things we are waiting for people to do. We also created a LGPL C, Java, and working on the ODBC driver because Oracle started to hassle a lot of MySQL's former customers who and users and said that they can't use MySQL anymore. And they couldn't even pay for that because Oracle has refused to sell them licenses. So they were basically had a choice to switch from MySQL to something else. So by creating free client libraries, we have helped them to get rid of the problems. TokuDB, how many have heard or tried TokuDB? Okay, so of all the years we have worked on MySQL, TokuDB is the first storage engine that has a chance to replace InnoDB. But you should just know that different designs, supports all features of InnoDB, and it's significantly faster in some things like inserts. They're not using a B-tree structure anymore, they're using something they call fractal trees. So this is really, really interesting, and if you are writing logs or you have lots of writes, you should test this one. It comes now, this is already in 5.5 and in 10.0. The next storage engine is something that we worked a couple of years to get into. MariaDB is created by guy in France, Olivier Bertrand, and it allows you to read lots of different formats from disks. We already have a CSV engine, but Connect can also do updates on it. If you have a big CSV file, it automatically create indexes in memory and use those. So it's really, really sophisticated engine, and you can also do ODBC. So in MariaDB today, you can do a join between Cassandra, MySQL, MariaDB, and Oracle at the same time in one query if you want to. So the challenge with forking MySQL was that I did a little bit too good job with MySQL. MySQL has probably some 50 million installations. It's known everywhere, and trying to create a product that is similar with another name is very hard, because everybody who had a problem in MySQL goes to the www.mysql.com website, and strangely enough there's nothing but MariaDB there. So it took us basically 4 years to get known, and also keeping up with MySQL development. Thankfully we had a better team than anybody else working with MariaDB, so that was actually the easy part. And actually creating a new developer community took some time. And then we also need to find a business model to be able to pay the people with not doing licensing. And the solutions for that was creating the MariaDB Foundation. And we didn't have any paying customers for first years, because the Sun salespeople went to every single customer who were used to paying for MySQL and said that Oracle will increase prices. No, you need to take a 3 to 5 year contract to ensure you don't get any raises in your contract. And everybody bought. So when I went and tried to get money from MariaDB, everybody said that come back after 2-3 years. And for being an entrepreneur, that's pretty tough. We're also creating a new documentation, totally free, both for MariaDB, MySQL, and SQL99. I bought the rights to the book SQL99 really, and published on the web. And the main difference from development point of view, there's lots of other involved with MariaDB. It's a really active project, and the foundation's job is to ensure that we get more and more companies and people working on it. And this is a slide for the 451 research group who 2009 did one survey, how many are using MySQL and the predicted usage over time, and they did a new survey in 2012, and this just shows that if people did expect MySQL usage to drop a little bit, but basically it hasn't, and this is the MariaDB part, and my job is to get this totally clean, of course. But this just shows that even if people talk a lot about SQL, SQL is here to stay for a long time. So things changed for us dramatically in December 2012 when Wikipedia announced that they're moving to MariaDB, and they got a lot of performance gains by doing that. And they didn't have a normal MySQL version. They had a MySQL version who was tuned for Wikipedia. They had lots of patches, lots of improvements just for their workload. So they took out these patches MySQL, put MariaDB instead, and they just got a 10% performance gain without doing any other changes. So by now the whole Wikipedia should have moved to MariaDB. All the distributions except Debian has moved to use MariaDB. Most of us actually using MariaDB in default. They have basically tested MariaDB and noted that they are so compatible. So when you upgrade to Fedora, Red Hat, OpenSUSE, or Slackware, next time you will have MariaDB. This will greatly enhance the MariaDB user base, and also means that within a few years there will be no MySQL anymore. The one thing that was lacking was Debian, and now we are in the unstable repository. Well, actually we are in the FTP to be there, and Otto should know more.
Yes. Yeah. The new queue of Debian.
So and with Debian you're getting into Ubuntu and so work on that. And that means that when that's done, we basically have all distribution. So reasons to use MariaDB today. The simple reason is that there's no reason whatsoever to use MySQL. Everything we have everything they have. We have a lot of things they don't have. We have stable code, mostly it's faster code. And we are guaranteed open source, and we are here. And we have people who have promised to work on this. And we have also through MySQL, we have funding for several years. And we did hear that somebody in Oracle was quite upset about us getting funding, which was kind of a little bit interesting. So the reason MySQL was successful, and this is actually the slide that is for any entrepreneur who wants to work on open source. I think that the first reason was we actually were using ourselves. Because when you do a product, it's very hard to know what are the needs, how are people going to use it, is this useful or not. If you're using it yourself, you know that everything you do is useful. And there didn't exist a good database for the web. Virtual company made it much cheaper to hire people. We come up with a way to do licenses on open source. We also had the rule that you should be able to install it and use it in 50 minutes. And 50 minutes back then in '95 was huge, because most open source code that you download, you got the source, and then you need to compile it. You notice it didn't compile on your platform. You had to go on the net that it really didn't exist and try to find patches and so on. It was hell. We made binaries from the start for all that we could. Really friendly to the community, and we waited with investments until the product was ready, so we could get a good deal in investment. So, questions? Went a little bit over, but
So, any queries for the man?
Is Sky the name of someone also?
no. I think it's actually, if you look at MySQL and MySQL, it's only two letters the difference.
Yeah.
How did you earn your first money on this musical? What was the first paying income from the musical database?
How I did get, I mean, we did get support contracts already the first month after we released it. There were a couple of companies in US who wanted to sponsor us. And then after 3 months of having it out, I put up a web page where people could download it. We already had that before, but we actually have a place where people could come in and put in their credit card, and we had the license who basically said, and this was when we got the business version, said that if you use it on the open source environment, it's free. If you are getting money on it, contact us to get to give a little bit back, and we made a couple of deals for that on that. Our biggest advantage was on Windows. We were not kind of open source. We were shareware in the sense of the binary. So the license we had in the binaries for the Windows said that you can use this for free for 1 month. After 1 month, you have to pay $200 or get the bad conscience, your choice. If you pay, here's the fax that you need to send your credit card details so we can deduct $200. And I have a fax going day and night, chick, 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 and that's how we would grow the first 5 years, nothing else. And the Windows people actually paid for the development.
So fax machine was a great invention that time.
Yeah.
What's up with the version jump to 10.0? Is that MariaDB, or is it Oracle doing fine
No,
things?
so the reason was that we needed time to do a 10.1, and we didn't want to wait 2 years.
All right.
And the other thing is also that we have actually a problem with 5.5. So Oracle has a release, and then we take the code, merge it, and do our release. So usually there can be depending if you're working on 5.5 or 10.0, that could be 2 or 3 weeks before we have a release. We also need to test everything they did. And those who are using repositories have a problem that if MySQL comes first to the repository, because it's a higher version number, and our packets are also saying that we are replacing MySQL. So their package is actually trying to replace MySQL as a MariaDB with MySQL. And that is the problem. By having a totally different numbers, we don't have the problem. So now we don't have to wait for MySQL to do a new release before we do a release, because we can jump the numbers before them.
Yeah.
So this solves 2 problems. And the other one is that it allows us to do more releases during the same time than they do, because we don't have to follow the numbers.
Yeah.
So the only thing that you have to look at our side, if you're using MySQL 5.6, you need to come to our side and say that if you're using 5.6, you have to use, it's easy to upgrade to 10.0 because we are compatible with those.
Yeah.
But it was kind of worth it that we get much more freedom to do more things than they do.
Sweet.
Well, I'm one of the black sheep here, since I'm mostly working with closed source.
Okay.
But I've been a SAP consultant for 10 years.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to hear a little bit about the MaxDB. How did you come about to...
The thing with MaxDB, we did one of the big deals, the first big deal we ever made was, I think we have it here. This one. So SAP come to us and said that they really want to use MySQL. They actually got MySQL to work with their biggest SAP installation, and they were about to do a really big contract with us and to support them. And it was basically when Oracle got to hear about that when they bought MariaDB and basically stopped that contract from happening. So those are kind of related. We actually were able to run all performance tests with SAP that was required for them to even consider us.
Right.
So even Sybase couldn't do that back then. But anyway, so MaxDB was SAP DB, and that was renamed to MaxDB, and because SAP had its own storage engine internally that they were using that was kind of open source, but nobody was really using it. So they thought that if we start pushing it, they may be able to get the community around it. So we tried to help MaxDB to become a success. The problem was that that was not written in C, it was written in some other language that I don't remember, that was then converted to C through their own tools that you then compile. So in effect, for anybody to be able to do work on MaxDB, they would have to spend a really long time to understand the code and the development process for doing that. And that didn't work. People are lazy.
Yeah, I mean, MariaDB is still open source and it's still used
Yeah.
in SAP installations, but
Yeah.
smaller installations at least.
Yeah. So the problem was that and the team never thought about open source. They never worked with the community, and they forced the community to use tools that they never used before, and that kind of is a failing argument.
Thanks.
Yes.
I was thinking whether the situation, the tension between Oracle and MariaDB, if it's interesting in a more general sense. I haven't looked into it, but the impression I get from your presentation here is that Oracle is, at least to some degree, trying to subvert or manipulate.
Let's say this way, that Oracle is known for company only concerned about money, and there's lots of people who have written books about that and hold presentations. Looking at the money flow, there's no sense whatsoever for Oracle keeping MariaDB alive, actually MySQL alive, because they are probably losing 1 billion a year just because MySQL exists. We know from a fact that they have lost installations worth tens of millions by customers who have decided, let's throw out Oracle 11G and put MySQL instead, just because the Oracle prices are so outrageous.
But how aggressive would you characterize Oracle being in manipulating the technology in MySQL and manipulating.
So currently they have an agreement until February next year with EU, where they have kind of indicated that they will keep MySQL free, and they don't want the EU to do something bad to them. So they will at least be nice until February. But they already not allowing people to buy, some people to buy licenses. Those who try to buy a MySQL license, it's more expensive than Oracle. They are really making it hard for people to use MySQL. They are for those who are doing OM. Looking at those who are trying to use it in a business critical environment, they are trying to put critical features into MySQL Enterprise that are closed source, basically forcing people to pay. They are not making life hard for anybody working on a MySQL code by removing test cases, not having any public trees about what's happening. There's no plans about the future. You can't get the code. You can't be part of it. So it's, from a community point of view, the project is totally dead. Oracle goes to conference say that they want to have a code, but they don't do anything to help people generate code.
But they're not being subversive in a very successful way. I interpret what you're saying now. It sounds like they're acting quite blunt and thinking themselves in the same time as they're trying to think the project.
Yeah, but they don't care about the project. Why would they care? They don't make any money of it. I mean, let's say maybe they make 100 millions of MySQL. When MySQL was sold to Sun, we were making 70 million a year. If you look at what Oracle has said, that their public statements, they have said that they are not interested in anything that doesn't generate 1 billion a year. MySQL doesn't generate 1 billion a year for Oracle, not a chance. They're still keeping it alive. It's the only project they are still keeping alive. And I'm 100% sure that if MariaDB wouldn't exist, they would do much, much less. Because many of the things that happen in MySQL comes when we do it first, and Oracle said, oh, we will do it too. So we are kind of driving them to do things. But logically, there is no reason whatsoever. And as long as they don't come out and give the community a blunt response with a promise that this is what we will do, this is what we promise, and this where they put actually money behind, that they will pay any fee if they don't follow these promises. Until that, I will not trust them. There's no reason to trust them. We already broke the promise to the community by making MySQL Enterprise include closed source features and removing things, and actually removed features from MySQL. When Oracle bought Sun, we had MySQL backup for all storage engine. We had foreign keys for all storage engine. The code was already done. It was just about to be released. Actually, it was about to be released that day because it was the MySQL conference. Oracle forbid those things to happen. And that code is destroyed in some archive, not accessible. If they would care about MySQL, why didn't they allow this feature that was already being developed to be part of MySQL? The reason was that would have made it easier to create other storage engines that would be as good as MariaDB. And they didn't want that. So there's no reason to trust it.
Do you have a good relationship with Red Hat? As MariaDB, and do you think that Red Hat will do the same path as Fedora? And
they already did it.
They already is the default replacement.
I don't know when the next Red Hat is coming out, or it's already out.
It will be in the 7.
The 7 MariaDB is default. You can still get MySQL, but you have to specify that.
Okay, great.
So currently the Red Hat has helped us get into Fedora and into Red Hat. But that's basically what they've done. They haven't given us any money or any other help, which I'm a little bit sad with, because it will be the interest to ensure that MySQL and MariaDB should survive. But that's the problem with all the American companies. If they can avoid paying, they will avoid paying. Things were different in '95. We actually get lots of support of people who paid even if they didn't have to. And that's why I don't believe that many of the open source models that people are using, like MongoDB, is trying to say that we will only do support, we will not survive. You need to something else, and that's why I'm pushing business source as a way that you combine business and open source in good proportions to be able to create a company where you can pay your developers and you can even get investors.
What is the form of the foundation? Is it a trade association?
It's a US 506 C6.
Trade association.
Yeah. Because I wanted to do a C3, but people said that that's too hard to do. Mozilla succeeded, but the IRS in US.
C3? C3 6?
But GNOME is
Yeah.
a C3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And earlier you could do a C3. But Mozilla got too much money from Google, so the IRS said something is strange here.
You can do it again now, by the way. I mean, things are shifting, but it was very, very difficult both for C3 and C6 actually.
Yeah. So what we are doing, we have is for a C6, the lawyers have told us that we should first operate a half year, 1 year as C6, and then you apply. And when we are C6, then let's apply for a C3.
Really? So you have 3 members now in the trade association. Is that what you said?
Yeah, we have three full-time members, and then we have a couple of sponsors. So full membership is $50,000 a year, and if somebody just wants to sponsor, that's $5,000 if somebody wants to help us. And the cost of driving the foundation is about $40,000 a month. So we do need help to survive. But I think we're doing a good job with the resources, and considering that the whole MariaDB development cost about $1 million a year, and actually be able to compete with Oracle and actually beat them, I think that's good investment.
Debian and Ubuntu user, how do you use MariaDB as a drop-in replacement?
So we have our own repositories, you can just point to it.
Ah, okay.
And we know Otto is helping us getting into the official one, so when will we be? Half a year before we should be unstable within a month.
It's in the Debian news queue at the moment, waiting for review. Then it will land in unstable.
So the strange thing is Debian is very popular, but everybody tells me that the packages is total hell compared to anybody else, and getting them in also. So it has been interesting process to getting us in there. We actually worked with Debian 4 years to get into the state where we are now, and we really wanted to be there. So open source kind of did the right thing. They just come to us and told us, no, we have done packages, and you can review them. And Red Hat was also very, very smooth. Debian, no help at all. You had to do everything ourselves. Very close community.
Any other questions? If not, let's give a big hand for the Monty. Here and technical track is going forward in 2 hours, so there's a couple of the keynotes in meanwhile and time for the lunch. So